Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the dimly lit industrial realm, shadows danced upon walls, cast by a symphonic ballet of robotic arms and conveyor belts. There, amidst the factory floor's kinetic ensemble, stood Atticus, transfixed by the glare of automation. He was a veteran of this steel-forged theater, where the cacophony of hammers and the hiss of fiery furnaces heralded each day's dawn. Yet, on this particular morn, a discordant note disrupted the familiar area of labor. A pain, deep within his spine, had simmered unnoticed for months, now erupting as a fierce crescendo that shot through his limbs. Atticus clenched his teeth, willing his body to endure, but as his hand stretched towards a control lever, agony struck with electric intensity, causing him to retreat.
Atticus, is all well?
The deep, worried voice of Mike penetrated the industrial melody. Atticus, startled, met Mike's concerned gaze, seeing worry lines etched onto his forehead.
A temporary plight, I assure you. Just need a minute,
Atticus mumbled, straightening up with effort. Mike shook his head.
Nah, man. You look like hell. Go see the doc, alright? We got this covered.
Atticus opened his mouth to protest, but the words died on his lips as another wave of pain washed over him. Nodding tersely, he made his way to the locker room, each step a struggle. Hours later, Atticus sat in a sterile examination room, the doctor's words washing over him like a cold tide.
Severe spinal injury, extended leave, possible surgery.
The prognosis hit him like a physical blow, leaving him reeling. The days that followed blurred together, a haze of pain medication and sleepless nights. Atticus found himself adrift, cut off from the routine that had defined his life for so long. The walls of his small apartment seemed to close in around him, suffocating in their sameness. One particularly bleak afternoon, as he mindlessly flipped through channels, a flash of color caught his eye. On the screen, a statuesque woman twirled in a flowing gown, the fabric shimmering like liquid starlight. Atticus found himself transfixed, drinking in every detail of the intricate design. Without conscious thought, his hand reached for a nearby notepad. As the fashion show continued, his pen flew across the page, rough sketches taking shape beneath his fingers. For the first time in weeks, the constant ache in his body receded, replaced by a spark of something. Interest? Excitement? As the credits rolled, Atticus looked down at the pages filled with his sketches, a strange warmth blooming in his chest. It was ridiculous, of course. He was a steelworker, not some fancy designer. And yet, the next day, driven by an impulse he couldn't quite explain, Atticus found himself in a small fabric store on the outskirts of town. His calloused hands, more accustomed to gripping heavy tools, tentatively stroked bolts of silk and chiffon. The elderly shopkeeper watched him with barely concealed amusement. "First time sewing, dear?" she asked, kindly. Atticus felt his face flush.
That obvious, huh?
She chuckled. "We all start somewhere. Here, let me show you some basics." Over the next few hours, Atticus absorbed every scrap of knowledge the woman offered, his earlier embarrassment fading in the face of genuine curiosity. By the time he left, arms laden with supplies, a seed of an idea had taken root in his mind. Back in his apartment, Atticus spread out his purchases on the kitchen table. With trembling hands, he picked up a pair of scissors and made the first cut. Time seemed to slow as he worked, the world outside fading away, until there was nothing but the whisper of fabric and the steady hum of the sewing machine he'd impulse bought on the way home. As dawn broke, Atticus stood back, exhausted but exhilarated. Before him lay a dress, far from perfect, with uneven seams and a slightly lopsided hem, but undeniably real. Without allowing himself to overthink, he slipped it over his head. The fabric settled against his skin, cool and soft. Atticus turned to face the full-length mirror on his closet door, and for a moment, he didn't recognize the person staring back at him. The dress, a deep emerald green, clung to curves he'd never noticed before, softening the hard angles of his body. A strand of hair fell across his face, and without thinking, he tucked it behind his ear with a delicate gesture that felt entirely foreign. In that moment, something shifted within him. The person in the mirror wasn't Atticus, the gruff steelworker with the broken body. This was someone else entirely, someone graceful, someone beautiful. Hope, he whispered, the name falling from his lips unbidden.
My name is Hope.
The days that followed were a whirlwind of creation. Hope, threw herself into designing and sewing with a fervor that surprised even her. The constant pain that had plagued her for months seemed to recede, overshadowed by the joy of bringing her visions to life. As her skills improved, so did her confidence. Hope began experimenting with makeup, watching countless tutorials online and practicing late into the night. She ordered a wig, running her fingers through the silky strands with wonder. Each new element added to her transformation felt like coming home to a self she'd never known existed. Weeks passed, and Hope's apartment slowly filled with dresses of every style and color imaginable. But, as proud as she was of her creations, a nagging doubt began to gnaw at her. What was the point of all this, if no one ever saw it? The answer came in the form of a chance encounter. Hope, feeling bold, had ventured out to a local coffee shop in one of her simpler designs, a sky-blue sundress that swished around her knees. As she waited in line, a voice behind her exclaimed, "Oh my God, I love your dress! Where did you get it?" Hope turned to find a woman about her age, eyes wide with admiration. For a moment, panic seized her, but then, drawing on a well of courage she didn't know she possessed, Hope smiled and said, "Actually, I made it myself." The woman, who introduced herself as Diane, was effusive in her praise. Before Hope knew it, they were seated at a table, deep in conversation about fashion and design. As they talked, Hope felt a warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt seen. Not as Atticus, the broken-down worker, but as Hope, the blossoming designer. Diane, it turned out, worked in marketing for a local boutique. "You know," she said, sipping her latte, "we're always on the lookout for fresh talent. Would you be interested in showing some of your work to my boss?" Hope's heart leapt into her throat. This was it, a real opportunity to share her passion with the world. But as quickly as the excitement came, doubt rushed in to fill its place. What if they found out about her past? What if they rejected her outright? Diane must have sensed her hesitation. "Hey, no pressure," she said gently. "Just think about it, okay? Here's my card. Give me a call if you change your mind." That night, Hope tossed and turned, unable to quiet the conflicting voices in her head. By morning, she'd made her decision. With shaking hands, she dialed the number on Diane's card. The following week found Hope standing in front of a small but elegant boutique, a garment bag slung over her arm. She took a deep breath, smoothed down her dress, a deep purple number she'd stayed up all night perfecting, and pushed open the door. Diane greeted her with a warm smile, introducing her to Evelyn, the boutique's owner. As Hope carefully unzipped the garment bag, revealing a shimmering cocktail dress in vibrant teal, she launched into an explanation of her design process. To her surprise and delight, the words flowed easily, her passion evident in every gesture. Evelyn listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Hope finished, the older woman was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. "My dear," she said, "I think we might have something special here." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Hope's designs were given a prominent place in the boutique's front window, drawing admiring glances from passers-by. Word spread quickly in their small town, and soon Hope found herself fielding orders and inquiries from people she'd never met. As her business grew, so did her confidence. Hope began to embrace her new identity fully, legally changing her name and starting hormone therapy. The transition wasn't always easy. There were days of doubt and dysphoria, moments when the weight of societal expectations felt crushing. But with each dress she created, each satisfied customer who left her shop beaming, Hope felt more and more like her true self. 1 year to the day after she'd first put on that green dress, Hope stood in front of her own boutique, the words "Hope's Couture" gleaming in gold above the door. As she turned the key in the lock, preparing for another day of creation and joy, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window. The woman who looked back at her bore little resemblance to the broken-down steelworker of a year ago. This woman stood tall and proud, her eyes bright with purpose and contentment. Hope smiled at her reflection, smoothed down her dress, a stunning creation in deep crimson, and stepped into her shop, ready to face whatever the day might bring. As the bell above the door chimed, Hope was greeted by the familiar scent of fabric and the soft hum of sewing machines. Her small team of seamstresses, hand-picked and trained by Hope herself, were already hard at work on the day's orders. "Morning, ladies!" Hope called out cheerfully, hanging up her coat. "What have we got on the agenda today?" Her assistant, a bubbly young woman named Rachel, approached with a tablet in hand. "We've got 3 fittings scheduled for this morning, and the fabric for the Henderson wedding party just arrived. Oh, and that fashion blogger I told you about? She posted her review of your spring collection. It's already gone viral." Hope's eyes widened. "Really? That's fantastic. Let's take a look." As they huddled around the computer, reading the glowing review, Hope felt a familiar surge of pride and gratitude. Each positive word, each shared photo of her designs, felt like a validation of the journey she'd undertaken. The day flew by in a flurry of activity. Hope moved from fitting to fitting, her trained eye catching every detail that needed adjustment. She loved this part of the process, seeing her creations come to life on real people, each dress telling a unique story. As she pinned the hem of a wedding gown, the bride-to-be caught Hope's eye in the mirror. "You know," the young woman said softly, "when I first came in here, I was so nervous. I'd tried on dozens of dresses, and nothing felt right. But the moment I put this on, it was like magic. You've made me feel beautiful in a way I never thought possible." Hope blinked back tears, touched by the sincerity in the bride's voice. "That's exactly why I do this," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Every person deserves to feel beautiful, to feel like their truest self." As the last customer left and the shop quieted, Hope found herself alone in the workroom. She ran her hand over a bolt of shimmering fabric, marveling at how far she'd come. From the depths of depression and physical pain, she'd found not just a new career, but a new self. The phone on her desk rang, startling her out of her reverie. "Hope's Kucher, this is Hope speaking," she answered automatically. "Hope? It's Mike, from the Steelworks." Hope froze, her heart hammering in her chest. She hadn't spoken to anyone from her old life in months, unsure of how they'd react to her transition.
I hope it's okay that I called," Mike continued, sounding uncertain. "I saw your ad in the paper and, well, I hardly recognized you.
But you look happy, really happy." Hope let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "I am happy, Mike. Happier than I've ever been." There was a pause on the other end of the line.
"That's good to hear, Hope. Really good. Listen, I was wondering,
my daughter's getting married next month, and she's been having a hard time finding the right dress. I thought maybe—" "I'd be honored," Hope said quickly, a smile spreading across her face. "Why don't you bring her by the shop tomorrow? We'll find her something perfect." As she hung up the phone, Hope felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was another bridge crossed, another step forward in her journey. The next morning, as Hope prepared to open the shop, she paused in front of the full-length mirror. The woman who looked back at her was strong, confident, and above all, authentic. She smoothed down her dress, a new design in a soft, flowing fabric that seemed to catch the light with every movement. With a smile, Hope turned the sign on the door to "Open" and stepped back into her world of color, texture, and endless possibility. She was ready for whatever the day might bring, secure in the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As the weeks turned into months, Hope's reputation continued to grow. Her designs were featured in regional fashion magazines, and she even received an invitation to showcase her work at a small but prestigious Fashion Week event in the nearest big city. The night before her big debut, Hope stood in her workroom, surrounded by the fruits of her labor. Racks of dresses in every color imaginable filled the space, each one a testament to her journey and growth as a designer. She ran her hand over the fabric of her centerpiece, a breathtaking evening gown in deep midnight blue, adorned with delicate silver beadwork that sparkled like stars. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, turning to see Rachel poking her head into the room. "Just wanted to check if you need anything else before I head out," her assistant said, eyes widening as she took in the array of dresses. "Wow, Hope, they're incredible." Hope smiled, touched by the awe in Rachel's voice. "Thank you. I can hardly believe it myself sometimes." Rachel stepped fully into the room, her expression turning serious. "You know, I never told you this, but you're kind of my hero." "Me?" Hope asked, surprised. Rachel nodded. "When I first started working here, I was in a pretty dark place. I'd just dropped out of college, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But watching you, seeing how passionate you are about your work, how you've built this amazing business from nothing, it inspired me, made me believe that I could find my own path too." Hope felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She crossed the room and pulled Rachel into a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more to me than you know." After Rachel left, Hope turned back to her creations, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Her journey wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone she touched with her work, everyone she inspired to embrace their true selves. The next day, as Hope stood backstage at the fashion show, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves, she thought about how far she'd come. From the broken man lying in a doctor's office to the woman about to showcase her designs to the world. It had been a journey of self-discovery, courage, and above all, hope. As the first strains of music began and her models lined up, Hope took a deep breath. She smoothed down her own dress, a stunning creation in emerald green, an homage to that first dress she'd ever made, and stepped out onto the runway to introduce her collection. The lights were blinding, the audience a sea of indistinct faces. But as Hope began to speak, her voice strong and clear, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. This was where she belonged. "Fashion to me isn't just about clothes," she said, her passion evident in every word. "It's about transformation. It's about becoming the person you've always known you could be. Each piece in this collection represents a step on that journey, from uncertainty to confidence, from hiding to celebrating who we truly are." As her models began to walk, showcasing her designs to the world, Hope felt a surge of pride unlike anything she'd ever experienced. This was more than just a fashion show. It was a declaration, a statement that said, loud and clear, that everyone deserved to feel beautiful, to feel seen, to feel like their authentic selves. The applause at the end of the show was thunderous. As Hope took her final bow, tears of joy streaming down her face, she knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, of course. The fashion world was notoriously fickle, and she was still navigating the complexities of her transition. But standing there, basking in the glow of her success, Hope knew that she was ready for whatever came next. She had found her calling, her true self, and nothing could take that away from her. As she made her way backstage, accepting congratulations and fielding questions from enthusiastic buyers, Hope caught sight of her reflection in a nearby mirror. The woman who looked back at her was radiant, confident, and above all, hopeful. With a smile, Hope straightened her shoulders and turned to face her future, a future bright with possibility, rich with creativity, and overflowing with the joy of being truly, authentically herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!